Today we're moving into Acts chapter 11, and this chapter feels incredibly relevant to the church today because it's really about how people respond when God moves outside of what feels familiar. Peter comes back to Jerusalem after what had happened with Cornelius and the Gentiles, where they received the Holy Spirit. Remember? The believers didn't celebrate at first. They questioned him. You went into the homes of uncircumcised people? I think this matters because religious people today still tend to do the same thing. When God moves outside of our traditions, our preferences, our church culture, our denominational expectations, people will often question it before they will celebrate it. But Peter was ready. He responds calmly. He walks them back through everything that God did. The vision, the Holy Spirit falling, the Gentiles receiving the same Spirit the Jewish believers had received already. And then Peter says something powerful. Who was I to stand in God's way? Honestly, that line hit me hard because I think sometimes churches become so committed to protecting systems that they accidentally resist what God is actually doing. Acts keeps showing us that the Holy Spirit doesn't stay trapped inside of our expectations. God keeps moving outside of comfort zones. Another thing that I loved here is that persecution actually spread the gospel further. The believers scattered after Stephen's death, but everywhere they went, the gospel was spread. The enemy tried to silence the church. God used the pressure to expand it. This still happens today. Sometimes the very thing that the enemy means to break you becomes the thing God uses to expand your reach, deepen your faith, or position you for purpose. Then we have Barnabas entering the picture again. Barnabas is one of the healthiest leaders in the entire book of Acts, in my opinion. When he sees what God is doing in Antioch, he doesn't compete with it. He doesn't try to control it. He encourages it. That is mature leadership. And honestly, the church today desperately needs more Barnabases. People secure enough to celebrate what God is doing in and through others. Then Barnabas goes and finds Saul. I love this because Barnabas sees the calling on Saul's life and he intentionally brings him alongside of him. He develops him. That is what leadership is. Leadership without insecurity. Insecure leadership needs control. Healthy leadership equips people and helps them grow. Honestly, some churches stay spiritually immature because the leaders are afraid to release people into their calling and train them to go. Barnabas wasn't afraid of Saul's potential. He encouraged it. And then Antioch becomes this beautiful picture of the church growing beyond cultural boundaries. Jews and Gentiles worshiping together, teaching together, growing together. And this is where believers are first called Christians, not because they perfectly fit religious culture, but because their lives reflected Jesus. Then at the end of the chapter, when prophecy comes about a famine that is coming, the believers respond with generosity, not panic, not fear, not selfishness, generosity. Honestly, that's another mark of spiritual maturity. Spirit-filled believers can focus outward instead of inward. So here's the challenge today. Are we willing to recognize God moving even when it doesn't happen the way we expect it to? Are we willing to encourage what God is doing in others instead of competing with it? Acts chapter 11 reminds us the Holy Spirit keeps moving beyond our expectations. Are you ready to move with Him?